The moment the Uber turned the corner and their luggage disappeared behind tinted glass, she moved. No hesitation, no limping, not even a blink. Maribel, the silent child, the Bedridden angel, her mother warned me never to disturb too much, sat up, swung her legs over the bed, stood, and walked toward the window, barefoot, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just watched from the hallway, heart pounding through my ribs, gripping a tray of toast I had made for a child who wasn't supposed to eat solid food. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes met mine. And then, in a voice soft and sharp as broken glass, she said, "I need you to hide my money. They're coming back for it." My brain couldn't process it. Not because she was speaking, not because she was walking, but because there was no fear in her voice. Just urgency, precision, like she had been waiting for this moment for years. I set the tray down, hands shaking. "What are you talking about?" Maribel walked past me like I didn't exist. Calm, controlled. She opened the hallway closet, reached behind the coats, and pulled out a metal box I had never seen before in this house. It was heavy, locked. She sat on the floor and pulled something from under the rug, a tiny key taped under the wood. Click. Inside were stacks of cash, a dusty envelope, and a photograph. The picture was old, crumpled. Two women. One of them was her mother. The other was my wife. In the picture, they weren't smiling. They weren't hugging. They were holding a check. The amount? For $1 million. "I'm not sick," Maribel whispered. "They just needed time." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what any of it meant. I didn't even know what day it was anymore. What had been pitched to me as a simple favor, babysitting my niece while the women of the family enjoyed a luxury girls' trip, had just turned into something I couldn't name. That was the last quiet moment in my house. After that, everything changed. Because that box, that one box hiding in my hallway closet, it was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Maribel curled up in the guest room, hugging that box like a lifeline. I sat in the hallway with the envelope open on my lap and a glass of water I didn't drink. My brain couldn't make sense of what I had just seen. And it wasn't just the money. Inside that envelope were things no child should ever have in her possession. Things I wasn't supposed to see. There was a signed deed for a property in Utah, not in any adult's name, but in Maribel's. There was a notarized guardianship transfer document dated 2 years ago. And at the very bottom was a simple typed letter with no header, no signature, no context. Just a few lines. She cannot remember. If she starts to distract her, keep her medicated until the trip. Once funds are cleared, terminate guardianship and initiate treatment protocol. Treatment protocol. The words echoed in my head like gunshots in an empty tunnel. I kept asking myself one question over and over. What in God's name had I been pulled into? And more urgently, why was I the one watching her now? The next morning, Maribel woke up before me. She was already dressed. She had combed her own hair. She looked awake, present, sharp even. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked like a real kid. Not like some porcelain doll tucked away for protection. She made herself cereal. She poured me a cup of coffee. I hadn't even realized I was sitting in shock on the edge of the couch until she placed a mug in my hand. "Uncle Colby," she said. It was the first time she called me that. "I need you to promise you won't call Mom. Or Aunt Renee. Or Grandpa." She stared straight into my eyes, and for a moment I saw something behind hers. Not fear, not panic, rage. I didn't answer. She took that as understanding. She opened the box again and pulled out something I hadn't noticed the night before. A flash drive. No label. No case. Just a tiny scratched-up piece of plastic she slid across the table to me. "Play it," she said. "Not here. Go to the garage. Don't use the Wi-Fi." That's when I started to get really, really scared. Not for her, for me. I did exactly what she said. I unplugged my laptop from a wall, turned off Bluetooth, and took it to the garage like I was about to commit a federal crime. My hand was shaking. I kept thinking, she's a kid. She's just confused. This is some game, some mix-up, something that'll make sense once the adults explain it. But when the video loaded, I forgot how to breathe. It was grainy footage, clearly from a hidden camera. A room I didn't recognize at first, until I realized it was our guest bedroom, but from before the remodel. Years ago, My wife was in the frame. So was Francine. And someone else, a man I didn't know, but I'd seen his face somewhere. He looked official. Medical coat, gloves, clipboard. Renee was holding Maribel. The girl looked groggy, eyes unfocused. They were injecting something into her arm while talking calmly about the dosage window and buying time. The man said something about payout being released once she stopped speaking. Francine laughed. Renee said, "She won't talk. Not after this. She'll be lucky to remember her name." The footage cut off right as Maribel let out a weak little mom, and then everything went black. I sat in that garage with my mouth wide open, heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted out. My body felt cold, like I was seeing something I wasn't meant to survive. And the worst part? That man in the lab coat? I finally remembered where I'd seen his face. He was in a picture in Renee's wallet. Her mentor, the one she said got her first job. I used to think he looked kind. Now he looked like a monster. I didn't go back into the house right away. I couldn't. I just stood there in the garage, hands trembling, watching that video play again and again like some kind of punishment loop. Every time I hit pause, I hoped something had changed, that maybe the audio would shift, the faces would blur, or the voice that called out Mom at the end wouldn't sound so real. But it did. It always did. And no matter how many times I closed the laptop, I still saw my wife's hands holding that syringe. What do you even call that? Abuse? Experimentation? What kind of person does that to a child? And the bigger question, why? I finally went back inside after an hour. Maybe more. I expected Maribel to be watching TV, drawing, anything to distract herself from the world. But she wasn't. She was sitting at the dining room table with a binder opened in front of her. Something old, tattered, filled with papers and plastic sleeves. She had a pen in her hand and was making a list. When I approached, she looked up calmly and said, "We need to start hiding things." "Hiding what?" I asked. She flipped the binder around. It wasn't just a list. It was a timeline. Dates, notes, names, receipts, travel confirmations, even prescriptions. Half the stuff looked too advanced for a 9-year-old to understand. But she'd marked certain entries with red highlighter. One of them had my name next to it, underlined twice. 2 months before you married her, she said, they moved money from his account to a holding firm in Reno. The owner of that account died 3 weeks later. Same day, Renee accidentally got hired into your company's medical benefits pool. I blinked. What are you talking about? I think my mom and your wife poisoned him. Slowly, my jaw went slack. That man was my grandfather, but he was never in the will. He made 2 years before he died. The new one gave everything to Mom and Aunt Renee, including my trust. She looked up at me then, and it finally clicked. This girl, this small, quiet child, had been planning this. She had been documenting every move. She had been building a case while everyone treated her like a ghost in the corner. And the only reason she was telling me now was because her window had opened. Her family was finally gone. Temporarily. They'll be back next Friday, she said. But not from Hawaii. They're not even on the mainland. I tracked their flights. They landed in Veracruz. I leaned against the counter, breath shallow. Why Veracruz? She hesitated. I think they're closing out the last account, and I think they think I still don't remember. There was a long silence. My brain couldn't catch up to the speed at which everything was unraveling. I was just some guy who worked a remote job, who married a nurse with strong opinions and polite parents. How did I become the only person standing between a 9-year-old and whatever the hell this was? "Colby," she said softly, "they picked you on purpose." I looked at her, confused. They needed someone dumb, someone quiet. No kids, no criminal record, no close family. "Excuse me. I didn't mean it mean," she said. "But it's true. You're safe to frame if something goes wrong." And they made sure of it. She reached into the binder and pulled out a sealed manila folder. Inside were court documents I'd never seen before. One had a signature that looked like mine. My full name, Colby Nathan Eldridge, authorizing medical power of attorney over a minor in the event of psychological regression. Dated 3 weeks ago. Stamped. Filed. I had never signed this in my life. I staggered backward. My head was spinning. My wife, her sister, their parents, all of them had built this. Bit by bit, a net of paperwork lies, and manipulation so detailed, so deliberate, that even the signatures matched. And if Maribel hadn't spoken when she did, I would have walked straight into it. By the time they returned, I would have legally been responsible for a child with no voice, a medical diagnosis I didn't understand, and a fortune hidden somewhere with my name on every form. And then, they'd vanish, and I'd go down for all of it. That night, I didn't brush my teeth, didn't eat, didn't sleep. I sat on the floor in the hallway outside the guest room, while Maribel lay curled up under 3 blankets, hugging the binder like it was a stuffed animal. I should have been the one comforting her. I should have been the adult. But all I could do was stare at the wall and wonder how I ever thought I understood my wife. Everything I believed about her, her job, her family, even how we met, now felt like a carefully scripted performance. One designed for me, tailored, calibrated, a custom-built fantasy she wore like a second skin. And the part that shook me most? I never noticed. The next morning, Maribel was already up before me again. I found her sitting on the floor in the living room, dismantling the baseboard under the window, using a screwdriver I didn't even know we owned. Before I could ask what she was doing, she pulled out a small black square the size of a cough drop. It had a blinking red light and a tiny antenna. "What is that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "A recorder," she said flatly. "Motion activated. There are 7 of them." I froze. 7. She nodded. 3 in this room. 1 in the hallway. 1 behind the bathroom vent. 2 in your bedroom. Don't worry, no video. Just audio. But still, she was 9. 9. And she had mapped the surveillance layout of my own house before I even realized there was a threat. Meanwhile, I had been ordering Thai food and binging nature documentaries like everything was normal. I helped her pull out the rest. We found the 2nd in the hall light fixture, the 3rd inside a fake electrical socket that was never wired. The bathroom vent? A recorder wired into a custom-fit panel, so subtle you'd only catch it if you unscrewed the plate and reached inside the duct. In the bedroom, she used a magnet to pull out one that had been tucked inside the curtain rod. Each one labeled on the inside with a tiny piece of masking tape. Renee C. Room 2, number 3, Francine C. Master bed, backup, number 7, guest monitoring. Maribel took all 7 and placed them in a cereal box. She didn't say anything, but I could feel the weight of her silence. Not just fear, exhaustion. Like she'd been carrying this plan in her head for years and was finally unloading it. Once they were all out, she handed me her tablet. Press play. I expected audio files. What I didn't expect was an app, one clearly not meant for kids, unlocked with a 6-digit password. Inside it were timestamp files going back 3 years. The first one? Just 2 voices. One of them was Renee's. The guy's harmless, slow, obedient, quiet. If anything goes wrong, he'll crumble, not fight. The other voice was Francine. Just make sure he signs everything without reading. He trusts you. You've got that dumb man loyalty thing going for you. I know what I'm doing, Renee replied. He thinks love means silence. He won't question a thing. I paused the audio. I didn't want to hear more. I didn't want to admit that everything they said was true. I was quiet. I didn't ask questions. I thought I was being respectful when really I was just being convenient. Maribel tugged my sleeve. You need to hear one more, she said. She scrolled to a newer file. Only 3 weeks old. The file was labeled Renee, Kitchen, AM, 6:14. In it, Renee was alone, and she was talking to someone on the phone. Once the assets transfer, I'll send the final dose through her 4. She'll sleep for a few days, long enough for us to be gone. Colby will panic, call the hospital, and by the time she wakes up, we'll have immunity from any stupid accusations. The voice on the other end asked, what if she talks? Renee's voice lowered. She won't. That's what the second injection is for. I dropped the tablet, not because of what she said, but because I finally understood why Maribel hadn't spoken for 6 years. This wasn't trauma. It was maintenance. They had been chemically muting her, and they were about to do it again. Maribel looked up at me. They weren't supposed to leave me with you this time. Something went wrong in their schedule, so we only have a few days before they fix it. My mouth was dry. Fix it how? She hesitated. Then she said, they'll fake my death. blame you, and disappear with the money. I didn't go back to work the next day. I couldn't. I tried to log into my company portal just to keep up appearances, and I got an error. Account suspended pending credential verification. I thought it was a fluke. I tried to reset my password. The site said my email no longer existed. Then I checked my actual email. My inbox was wiped clean. Entire threads gone. Everything from HR gone. My employment records gone. Then the real horror hit me. They were already erasing me. I stared at the empty screen, heart racing. What Renee had built wasn't just a personal lie. It was structural, legal, digital. She was dismantling my entire life, piece by piece, quietly, cleanly, so that by the time the authorities came, I'd be just some guy living in a house with a child he had no legal right to care for, sitting on funds he didn't know he had access to, surrounded by signed documents in his name. And they would believe I snapped. Maribel must have seen something in my face. She walked over and handed me a sticky note. There were 6 digits on it, a name, and a burner number. She said to give this to you if things started to vanish, Maribel said softly. Ooh, my tutor. Her real name's Sasha. But to them, she was just the quiet sitter. She worked here for a year, taught me how to listen without being seen. You trust her. She saved my teeth, she said. That's how I trust her. I didn't ask what that meant. I just called the number. It rang once, then silence. Then a voice answered, "You're late." My throat tightened. This is Colby. I don't know what's going on, but You're being ghosted, the woman said. Digital suffocation. They're collapsing your identity before the story breaks. I blinked. What story? The one they'll feed the police. The mentally unwell step-uncle with delusions, caught trying to cash in a dead girl's trust fund. That one. I sank into the chair. They've used it before, she continued. 3 times. Different states. Different names. But the pattern's the same. Over-medicated child. Sudden disappearance. Isolated guardian, left behind. Trust fund gets liquidated through a proxy. And the surviving adults? Vanish into another life. I felt like I was going to throw up. She didn't wait for me to catch up. They won't come back through the front door. When the story drops, they'll come in through the law. You mean CPS? No, I mean federal custody. FBI, maybe. Because Maribel isn't just a minor. She's a financial asset tied to 3 flagged death certificates and a falsified estate transfer that's already under quiet review. My brain could barely keep up. So what do? Disappear first. I laughed, bitter and hollow. With a child? That's the part you won't like, she said. You can't take her. Not yet. I froze. What? She's being monitored. Every credit card swipe, every digital ping, every time her tablet connects to a network, someone logs it. If you take her, they'll flag the movement, and then they'll know you know. And if they know that, you won't get a trial. You'll get a headline and a locked door. My heart was pounding in my ears. So what then? Just wait until they show up with a warrant? No, she said quietly. You give them what they're looking for. Which is... She paused. Then, you fake your breakdown. You pretend to fall apart. You make it look like everything's working according to plan. And while they're watching your spiral, I'll get her out. I stood there silent. This woman, this stranger, was offering to extract a child from a criminal network of identity erasers and vanish her without a trace. And what happens if she disappears while under my care? She won't, Sasha said. She'll disappear before the story drops. You'll call it in. You'll tell them she ran away, that she was acting strange, that you were scared. They'll believe you. That's what you are to them. Scared. Predictable. Fragile. And what about me? Sasha hesitated. You'll need to disappear too. But not physically. Digitally. Burn the devices. Kill your name. Become a ghost in plain sight. And when it's safe, we'll talk again. I looked down at Maribel, who was quietly organizing a backpack in the hallway. Not toys, but folders, flash drives, and labeled index cards. She wasn't packing for escape. She was preparing for testimony. I whispered into the phone. How do I know this isn't another setup? You don't, Sasha said. But she does. And she gave you the note. She hung up. The first time I saw her again, she smiled like nothing had happened. Renee. It was 3 days after the call with Sasha. I was following her instructions, logging into fake email accounts, deleting my digital paper trail, throwing out the SIM card in my phone, and acting like I was crumbling under the weight of confusion and stress. Maribel kept a low profile. No devices, no connection, not even glancing out the window for more than a few seconds. We stayed indoors, lights low, quiet. Then, just as Sasha predicted, the story dropped. It started on some fringe blog. Local man accused of financial manipulation in guardianship case. Then it hit a more legitimate site, dressed up with better language. Family concern grows over child's well-being while in temporary custody. They didn't use my name. Not yet. But they mentioned a relative with documented emotional instability. That's all it took. By evening, my former employer sent an email to what was left of my inbox. We regret to inform you that due to recent allegations, your contract has been terminated pending further review. I didn't even try to reply. There was no one on the other end. But the real twist didn't come through a screen. It came to my door. She knocked like she belonged there. Casual. Polite. Like she was returning from a walk. Not a conspiracy. I froze. Maribel looked at me from the hallway, her face suddenly pale. I told her to go to the crawl space, our pre-agreed hiding place, and then I opened the door. Renee stood on the porch wearing my college hoodie. Her hair pulled back like always. Her expression unreadable. I thought I'd stop by, she said lightly. You haven't been returning messages. I said nothing, just stared. She glanced past me, casually peeking inside. Where's Maribel? That was it. That question. Not how are you? Not is everything okay? Not even a lie like, I'm sorry for disappearing. Just, where's Maribel? And she was smiling when she asked it. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. She's resting. Renee's eyes flicked to the lock behind me. Colby, I know this looks weird. I know it feels like everything's spiraling. But you have to trust me. There are things I couldn't explain over the phone. Things I didn't even want you to know, for your safety. Like the fake medical forms, the surveillance, the recorded conversations. Her smile faded for just a second. Just enough. Then came the laugh. Quiet. Charming. Disarming. Baby, you've been online too much. You're letting the paranoia get to you. I think we need to call someone. That's when I realized she was holding her phone. Not filming. Not dialing. Recording. She was building the narrative. Right there on my porch. Unstable Mann. Paranoid. Possibly delusional. The wife, concerned and supportive, trying to get him help. I nodded slowly. You're right. I've been confused. Her eyes lit up, but not kindly. She stepped forward. Then let me in. Let's just talk. Like normal people. You need rest. Food. Maybe a break. I stepped back. You should come back tonight. She tilted her head. What? I'll have more answers by then. She squinted at me. You're not making sense. I leaned in close enough for her to smell the sweat on my collar. Neither did that little girl when she finally spoke and remembered everything. Renee froze. There was the flicker, that cold, quiet blink of a predator cornered. I'll see you tonight, I said. Then I walked inside and closed the door. The deadbolt clicked like thunder behind me. In the hallway, Maribel stepped out of the crawl space. Did she see me? No, I said, but she saw something else. What? I looked her in the eye. Doubt. Maribel nodded once. Then we're close. Close to what? I wasn't sure. But something was coming, and they weren't smiling anymore. At 6:42 p.m., Maribel disappeared. I knew it was coming. Sasha had sent me a one-word text on the burner. Window. That was the signal. Maribel had 30 minutes to vanish. No digital trace, no physical trail. Just gone. The kind of disappearance that's either genius or madness. And I had to make it look like a complete accident. So I let her go. She left through the back bathroom window while I was visibly walking in circles in the front yard, yelling her name, hands in my hair, face pale and frantic for the world to see. Our nosy neighbor across the street, Mrs. Dorn, peeked through her blinds. I made sure she saw me bang on my own door, fake the panic, kick over the recycling bin. I needed eyes. Witnesses. I needed it all to look real. Because it was. I called the police exactly 4 minutes after Maribel left. My voice cracked. My words stumbled. I gave them the rehearsed story. She was acting strange. I turned away for a minute. Now she's gone. I don't know where she could have gone. She doesn't even speak. They dispatched a cruiser and told me to stay put. I hung up. Then I went still. because from the hallway came the quiet sound of a key turning in a lock. I hadn't even realized someone had entered until the front door opened behind me. Not with force, with familiarity. Renee walked in like she still lived there. But she wasn't alone. A man followed behind her. Tall, shaved head, neatly dressed, too neat for a cop, too vague for a neighbor. He scanned the living room like he was checking boxes on a clipboard only he could see. Renee saw the look on my face and smiled wide, too wide. "Oh, thank God," she said. "They're already looking for her." "That's good. That's the right thing." I said nothing. The man behind her stepped forward and showed me a badge. But not police. Department of Family Compliance and Protective Measures. That wasn't even a real agency. I could tell. I could feel it. The badge looked expensive, but the wording was wrong. It was designed to confuse, to stall people like me just long enough to hand something over. "She's missing," I said slowly. The man nodded, neutral. "That's what we were told. We like to have a look around the property. Safety procedure. Standard response in family custody matters." "You have a warrant?" I asked. Renee looked at me, still smiling. "Colby, he doesn't need one if you give permission." I stepped aside. "Then he doesn't have permission." The smile cracked. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other. Her ally standing stiff behind her like a loaded question. I had no idea what came next. Was he armed? Was he recording? Was this even real? Or was I just playing checkers while they played chess? But then something happened I hadn't planned for. A voice came from the hallway. I wouldn't recommend going upstairs. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Maribel's. It was Sasha. She stepped out of the shadows behind the staircase like she'd been standing there all along. Dark hoodie, gloves, calm like a surgeon. Renee's body locked up like she'd been tossed. "You," she whispered. "You were terminated." Sasha nodded. "You always were bad at finishing the job." The man beside Renee moved his hand to his waist. Instinctive, subtle, but Sasha already had hers in her coat pocket. "No weapons," she said. "Not unless you want this to end up on 3 press outlets and a federal tip line in 20 seconds. You know I don't bluff." Renee stepped back. Her entire posture collapsed, like she knew it was over, but didn't know what part exactly broke first. "You don't have her," she said. "She's not with you." Sasha tilted her head. "Are you sure?" That was the first time I saw Renee hesitate. And for a woman who had built a life on flawless timing and perfectly controlled chaos, hesitation was the worst thing she could show. Sasha turned to me. "They'll be gone in 90 seconds. If not, we go to plan B." Renee's lips twitched. "You'll never prove." "You don't need to prove," I cut in. "You just need to be seen." She looked at me, and for the first time since this entire nightmare began, I saw it. Not confidence, not control, fear. She backed toward the door. The man followed her, eyes scanning Sasha like he couldn't place what she was. Threat? Witness? Assassin? They left without another word. When the door clicked shut, I turned to Sasha. She was already tapping her phone. "Maribel?" I asked. "She's safe," she said, "in a place even I couldn't find if I hadn't planted it myself." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for hours. "What now?" I asked. Sasha finally looked up at me. "Now," she said, "we make them confess. On camera." The confession didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in my living room. 3 days after Renee and her fake compliance officer left my property, Sasha returned, not alone and not quietly. She brought a briefcase. Inside, 2 hidden cameras, an encrypted laptop, and a folder filled with enough documented fraud, medical malpractice, and financial conspiracy to light up the entire Covington family tree like a Christmas tree in July. She also brought Maribel. She came in quietly, still with that little fox in her arms. But she was changed, taller somehow, not in height, in spirit. Like the moment she stepped through that door, she finally felt safe. That night, everything shifted. Sasha didn't wait. She set up the room, planted the camera, and told me, "They won't confess to the cops, but they will to you." "Why me?" "Because they think you're broken, which makes you useful, which makes them greedy." I didn't understand what she meant. Until Renee called. She used a burner number. Tried to sound warm, worried. She asked if Maribel had come back. Said she was so relieved to hear from me. That she'd had doubts about everything. That maybe the people around her weren't being honest either. She wanted to meet. I said yes. We met at a public park near school, cameras rolling, with Sasha watching from a van nearby. And Renee talked. Oh, she talked. Try to pull the emotional strings first. We loved you, Colby. We trusted you. Then came the deflection. Francine pushed for the money. I didn't know the full plan. I thought the treatments were real. I thought Maribel would be safe. Finally, the moment Sasha waited for, Renee admitted the trust fund manipulation. I never meant for it to go that far, she said. It was supposed to look like a medical error. We had paperwork to prove it. I didn't reply. I just let her talk. When she left, Sasha handed me the footage on a hard drive. That's enough, she said. That's the nail. You want to press charges. But I hesitated. What I really wanted was for the world to hear Maribel. We made a different choice. The video we released wasn't a police report. It wasn't a press conference. It was a recording of Maribel sitting in my kitchen, telling her story from her voice. Her real voice. She said her name. She said what they did. She showed the binder, the receipts, the drawings she made to stay sane. And at the end, she said something that made me break. I didn't forget. I just waited until someone finally listened. The video went viral in under 6 hours. Not because it was flashy, but because it was real, raw, brave, and undeniable. The next morning, the Covingtons went silent. No statements, no denials, just disappeared. But the authorities didn't. Renee and Francine were arrested 2 days later, trying to access a hidden account offshore. Sasha made sure the case was handed to the right federal team, one that didn't just see it as domestic abuse, but as financial trafficking involving a minor. As for Maribel, she lives with me now, officially, not as a favor, not as a placeholder, as family. She speaks more now, not constantly, but when it matters. Like last week when she saw me burning the last fake document Renee ever signed and quietly said, "You don't have to watch your back anymore." I asked her what she meant. She shrugged. Because now I'm watching it with you. I didn't cry in front of her. But later that night, in the dark of the hallway, I did. And it wasn't because I was scared anymore. It was because I finally felt what safety actually meant.